Hello everybody. Gonna go over two things in this video. One is a bit of an update on my DIY USB power bank, which I've been working on for a few weeks now. I would like to be further on, but I'm waiting on parts. You may remember in the part 1 video, it's in the history there if you go and look for it, I talked about using this, I think it was the TS106 chip, which is a charge controller chip to charge up some 18 650 batteries, which are these type here. They look like a larger AA type. The lithium ion batteries, and they use 3.7 volts. And there's also another chip, which it's a DC boost converter, so it converts 3.7 up to 5 volts for USB output to phones. And I was going to build a circuit taking power from a solar panel, which are these cheap USB solar panels you get off eBay. They generate 5 volts, not a huge amount of amps, so. And also tie that into mains power and wind up power using one of these sort of doohickeys here. But then I had an idea. I said, there's an easier way of doing this. So I ended up getting these cheap little USB power banks. They have 1800 milliamp hours. They have a USB in and out, and I thought, you know something, I don't actually need to wire anything up. I don't need to do any soldering. I could just use a couple of these into a USB hub. And, pardon me. And another USB hub for the output. The beauty of this is I'm not soldering anything in. So if I wanted to take one of these out of the circuit to give to someone, I could, if I so chose. If I was that generous. So I will admit it ends up looking like something. It looks a bit like Medusa's hair, but unlike Medusa, who turns you to concrete or stone when you look at her. In this setup, you're forced to undo and untangle some USB leads. But anyway, so just if it is, this thing generates about 600 to 700 milliamp hours when the sun is good, which is better than I expected. And that's just enough to get these trickle charging. Now, there would be more charge going through to these if this wasn't as sophisticated. This is a Belkin. It's a good quality USB hub. USB 1, I've had this about 10 years. But there is onboard circuitry. And there's also an onboard USB, which is draining a little bit of the power out. So the amount of power it's getting through to the hubs, sorry, to the power banks, isn't that great. So I'm on the lookout for a really cheap and nasty USB hub, because generally they have less onboard circuitry, and they do a better job of getting power through. And it's the same on the reverse for the outputs. Just to show you what it looks like, I'm just going to unplug it from the solar panel. So I want to show you this. This is actually the box I'm going to be using to put it all in. So I've cut a hole here in the top. It's really hard to cut a hole in this plastic, it cracks. And there's the underside. So it's called a really useful box. It's been moderately useful for me. So I'm just going to plug it into the mains here. Well, mains USB adapter. You can see them all lighting up there. But it's this LED which I want to get out. I've actually opened this up and tried to remove it, but it's surface mounted, so that's not an option. Hence my desire to find a really cheap and nasty USB hub, because they generally have less circuitry that's draining power. I like to be a bit careful with the power side of things, just to make sure you don't overload them, because they tend to be made a bit cheap. So there you go. This is a work in progress. So hopefully I'll have a more in-depth video on this coming soon. But what I want to talk to you now about is a cheap and nasty watch. Back in the 80s, remember them? There was a Casio remote control watch. And I had one. And this is a time when Casio was making all sorts of weird and wonderful watches. With so much weird and wonderful functionality into them. See if I can look this up. Here we go. Right, I've got it on my phone. Here it is. There, that one. Don't want to show you my cards. At the time, what was it? The CMD 40B-1T. Now at the time, growing up in the 80s and the early 90s, my grandmother, bless her, would send me a banker's draft from the TSB, Trustee Savings Bank in Northern Ireland, where I was living in England at the time. And not knowing any better, she addressed it to me, and I would take it to Barclays, and I had a Super Saver account. You remember when in the 80s when all the UK banks were trying to get kids involved and they were offering all these great things, like Barclays had the Super Saver with all the folders and all. Midland had Griffin Saver, so you got a sports bag and a dictionary, and NatWest had something to do with piggy banks. And the piggy banks turned out to be quite valuable, so I'm told. And but anyway, I was with Barclays, so I'd pay the check in, and then a few days later I go, I want to buy a new Casio. So I'd go to the Argos catalogue and see what the latest Casios were, and they had the calculator watch, they had the data bank watch, they had a pulse measuring watch, they had, what else did they have? An altimeter watch that took your altitude. And then coming into the 90s, they had the GPS watch and the remote control watch, which I also had. And I remember the Casio watch being not bad, but terrible at sending a signal any distance. Now, if you wanted to control a TV, you had to be within 2 meters. So, well made, but not exactly useful. But it did the job. It also had a calculator, so, never mind. So this is a multifunction watch. It's actually a remote control watch I found on eBay. And look at it. Just the thing you do when you're going with your remote control watch, you take it out water skiing. And of course this watch is really waterproof, isn't it? Yeah, of course it is. Anyway, take this to one side. This is going to be a bit of a skimming review because the watch is actually quite painful to work with. So I'm not going to put a huge amount of detail into it. It's basically it's TV, DVD, VCR / hi-fi remote control. The instructions are hard. That's putting it nicely. The English is, well, it's badly translated. For example, as it says down here, design and specifications are subject to chung hop without notice. I would really love to know what that means. There you go. Chung hop. Is that some sort of vasectomy? Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. Who knows? Anyway, build quality. Yeah, it's crap. It's like, look at that. No, it's not very good. Obviously not waterproof. It looks like these are buttons at the side. They're not. They don't do anything. There's no side buttons. There is an IR emitter at the top here, which actually looks better than the one on the Casio, because the Casio one's pardon me, was hidden behind a piece of red plastic. But it's touch sensitive. It's got these are 6 buttons at the bottom. So I'm just going to take you quickly through how this works. First thing I have to point out, it's really hard to read. I mean, the contrast is way too low, and the letters are too small, and even looking magnified through a phone or a magnifying glass, it's really still hard to work. But the gist of it is if I can get this up here, if I go into TV mode, I get up and down for volume here and here, and let's go on. Fast forward and reverse. I think that's channel change. Oh. And there's some other stuff which I can't really read, to be honest with you. Come on, focus. Still gonna play ball. But as you can see, it's pretty hard to read. Suffice to say, setting it up is a bit of a pain because the screen doesn't really react. Now there is a light, but look what happens when I press the button. As you can see, the screen doesn't have a protective polycarbonate layer. So pressing on it squishes it around and wrecks with the LCD. I've gone into time set mode somehow. Let's see if I can get the light mode. The thing is, light mode only activates, well, you only have that option in one of the several modes that's available. So I'm just going to try and find the mode I need. I'm not having much luck here, am I? No, I don't want to set in mode. Well, this is where you enter the code. Code 8 was for Samsung, and I'll come to that in a second. Samsung TVs. So here we go. There we go. There's the light. But the light doesn't really help because it's only on for a couple of seconds. Let's see. Do that again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 seconds. There you go. Touching the screen distorts it. I don't know if you can see that. See? So yeah, it's what you expect. It's a pile of crap. I bought this on eBay for, I think it was $4, $4.50. So it's exactly what you expect it is. It's rubbish. Typical mass-produced stuff, though, from the Far East. But that being said, the remote control function is actually surprisingly good. Now, I don't own a television. We have young children in the house, and my daughter, when she was like 2 years old, tried to pull a television on top of her. That was enough for us to say, let's just switch to using tablets and the like. So, no TV. So we've nothing to remote control. And the hi-fi is a fancy modern one, which doesn't have the manufacturer listed on this sheet on the back. And there are most manufacturers there. Apparently Harley-Davidson make televisions. Or they rebrand them, who knew? Yay, rock and roll Harley-Davidson. Out in the road there, being all hard and whoa. We've got LCD televisions. Whoa. There you go. Selling out at its best, but anyway, that's by the by. But yeah, so not knowing what to do with this to test out the television side, the remote control functionality, I went to a branch of Harvey Norman's, which is it's an Australian chain of television, furniture, and computer retailer stores. For some reason, they opened their first international stores in Ireland. Who would have thought that? But anyway, yeah, their advertising is phenomenally obnoxious, and yeah, really, it is obnoxious. It's just like an Australian guy shouting at you. But anyway, I went into their store and I went to the television section. I tested out the remote controllers, and when I was able to press the button where I wanted to, it actually worked pretty decent from about 6 meters away. So the remote control side of the thing is actually pretty decent, and it works pretty well if you can get the buttons pressed correctly. So that's my review. It's $4.50 of sort of crap. No, it kind of works. It's a novelty. No, and it's the sort of thing you might want to take to the pub to annoy people watching the football. And if you want to get your head kicked in at the same time. So there you go. I've actually got another one on the way, which is actually made of metal and has real buttons. So I'm waiting for that to arrive, and that might be more in line with the Casio watch I was telling you about. So I'll do a review of that as soon as it arrives. So there you go. It's crap. There you go. I say there you go a lot, don't I? I do. Yeah. So there you go.